It's good to be back. It's been a while.
I agree. Losing still isn't fun, but what are you gonna do?
No, especially when you hit one of the few bricks left in your deck. That was
The
tough to
few
watch.
I literally said to myself before that last turn, the only bad card in my deck is the other lightning bolt. Because any land turns on Force of Will, and any spell is good, either turning on Force of Will or better. I had exactly one non-blue,
I,
non-land card in my deck at that point.
well, I mean, is there still young pyromancer in there?
Oh, there's Pyro. Young Pyromancers are bad. You're right. They don't help. All right. It's
It's
not the only
still
bad card. You're right.
it's
More
still
bricks still.
really light. It's still really light. Yeah.
It was still a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man moment, right? I envisioned my doom, and then there
Yeah.
it was. Very much a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man moment for me.
And it's
Oh,
one of those things that it's so close too. It hurts that much more just because it puts him to one, and he chooses not to go for Lab Maniac, where it's still
right. I was
useful.
like, come on, he's like complaining about all these misplays. Just do the straightforward kill. Just Lab Maniac. It's easy. No, he had to
Yeah,
see to go for the tendrils.
it's what you're used to. Just go back to what you're used to. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
tough.
I thought I was gonna win. I mean, the bolt isn't bad if he goes for the maniac kill, obviously, because I went through a counter. Oh well. The annoying part was I built a Cabal Therapy deck and didn't draw a single Cabal Therapy in the entire match.
I
With
mean,
the
it's
setup.
also a little tough to watch him with the ritual tutor. Just let the one mana go. Your
Well, he
turn.
said he miscounted his mana. He couldn't count to five, apparently.
No, I have absolutely done that playing Doomsday, and you know what? You'll probably see me do it in the next match, where you're looking at your board and you've been thinking about so many different things. All of a sudden, you forget that you've already laid a land that turn, and you're in the middle of a tutor going, "Well, this just went terribly."
Yeah. No, I like the Doomsday deck. I like the deck I'm playing too. I mean, I do think the matchup is decent for me. I don't think it's amazing. I mean, obviously you can lose. Doomsday is a great deck and can just explode out of nowhere, but being able to Cabal Therapy them a lot is good. Or at least in theory. You'll have to trust me on that one, I guess.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, we didn't get to see it, but I believe it.
Anyway, now though, time for the main event. In one corner, Luis Scott-Vargas. In the other corner, Eric Froehlich. The only guys that have made the playoffs of both previous seasons of Vintage Super League. The defending champ, the Hall of Famer, the soon-to-be Hall of Famer. It's a lot going on in this match.
There will be a lot going on. It's
There's
interesting.
also Luis playing a deck without Force of Will. How does that
That's
happen?
that throws me for the biggest loop. I think he just assumed Ifra would play something that plays favorably against Force of Will, or whoever was playing against him.
Yeah, he didn't know his opponent, right? He's just thinking
Right.
about the field, and yeah, he has played four Force of Wills in every single deck. He's submitted for Vintage Super League. Three decks plus what? Two playoff decks the first year. Three decks plus two playoff decks last year. They've all had four Force of Wills. Every single one of them. Not this
Yeah,
one.
it's crazy.
No, he's and note the coercive portal in the sideboard. I'm told that's a real magic card. I'm not sure I've ever seen it in play.
I
That's
don't think I
actually
know
not
what
true.
it
I think I
does.
drafted it in Vintage Masters. It's pretty good.
But what does it do?
So it's 4 mana artifact, and you consult the will of the council at the beginning of your upkeep and decide if every non-land permanent is going to blow up or if you get to draw an extra card. So it's playing the
Oh,
kind
okay.
of Staff of Nin role that you'll see in these workshop decks a lot, where they want a
Hmm.
personal Howling Mine, but they also want the ability to kill creatures. Staff of Nin costs 6 mana. This does a similar thing for 4, although you can't pick off a Pyromancer and then continue with your personal Howling Mine.
Yeah, I have actually talked to some vintage players about that card. I just actually had no idea what the name of it was.
Sure. Yeah, so Luis is on FRO-BOTS. It's the workshop deck. The FRO-BOTS piece of it is Archdon Ravager Triskelion. That combo was, not completely discovered by Eric Froehlich, but kind of polished up and shown off in the last Vintage Super League by Eric Froehlich. So the
Well,
name
yeah,
FRO-BOTS seems to have stuck, which I think is kind of cool.
it's stuck, and a number of people are playing FRO-BOTS, except for Ifro.
Yeah, hilariously enough. Well, Chris went with the Martello Shops variant, but yeah, 2 of our 3 Shops decks are in fact FRO-BOTS decks. Eric, though, he's on land still.
I
4
wouldn't
copies
call
of
it a.
Standstill and
It's
like 20 plus lands. He thinks this is actually a really good matchup for him. He's happy to be playing against workshops.
I have no idea because this is a less. For me, it's a non-traditional version of land still, but I'm thinking of land still back around like vintage champs. Boy, what would that have been? When
Yeah.
Chris was winning, like East Coast vintage tournaments with it. What would that have been? 2010, 2011, something like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, the
Um,
basic idea of having standstills to kind of ice the game while you play more lands than your opponent, and you can just attack and kill them with man lands, like Mishra's Factory in particular, has been around for a while, and it's always been pretty solid. It's a good control shell. You see 4 Force of Will, 3 mana drains, 4 mental missteps. A lot of counter magic in this deck. There's a Flusterstorm, a Pierce, a Misdirection. He's got more counter magic than any other deck in the format. Solid card drawing. But yeah, I think the new twist that I haven't seen either is a couple of Monastery Mentors just kind of finish things off.
it's also strange for me to see a deck named land still that only has 3 man lands.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does have the 20, was it 20 plus? 4, 8, 14, 17, 18. 20 lands. He's got a main deck Crucible, too. How good is that? You're like pre-sideboarded against the Shops deck with a main deck Crucible.
Yeah. No, it should be very interesting. If Ifro says he has a favorable matchup against Shops, I'm going to take his word for it. There's a little 1 next to his name when he's commentating for a reason.
Indeed. You'll have to choose between the 1 and the Hall of Fame pretty soon here, I think.
Yeah, I heard you just say the Hall of Famer and the soon-to-be Hall of Famer. You seem fairly sure on Ifro's credentials carrying him through.
Look, I did my analysis earlier today, and like the numbers just leap off the page. I will be shocked if he doesn't get voted in. He's got the
I'll be
4 Pro Tour
surprised as
top
well.
8s now. He's got 10 top 16s. He's got an ocean of pro points. Yeah, I will be shocked if he doesn't get in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll be surprised, but I know from having been there and having been on the ballot, when you're the person on the ballot, it certainly feels like it's terribly at risk.
No, that's fair. Totally fair. All right. It looks like we are ready to play. Let's get down to the match. All right. There we go. Luis has no Mishra's Workshop in his hand. I don't think they've resolved mulligans yet. Eric only had, well, Eric 2 lands and standstill. Probably keeps that, right?
But the LSVs couldn't be a keep. Yeah, it was 2 mana with no workshop.
Yeah.
And this is at least 3 with 2 chalices.
What do you chalice against land still? I mean, Eric got to go first, so I think if you were on the play, you would just chalice 0 and try to catch his moxes in his hand. Or at least that's an option, especially with multiple chalices in your hand. Chalice 1 is insanely good against the usual sort of Monastery Mentor, Delver's Secret style decks. Not as good against landstill. And here, yeah, LSV goes for the Chalice on 1, which is usually an extremely powerful number, but doesn't actually do much to Eric's hand.
No, it doesn't. And as I'm thinking about the deck list that we looked at before the match started, probably doesn't do much to his deck in general. But I think you can still lead with the Chalice for 1 pretty easily, knowing if you get that next mana source, you can attempt a Chalice for 2.
True. Now, what does Eric just island standstill? He's out of lands. I mean, I don't know that he really wants to ice the game here, but getting Luis to stop casting spells sounds great.
I think he wants to ice the game. He knows his opponent obviously only has 1 strip mine. He's got 2 islands in play now. Those 2 mental missteps are dead in his hand.
Yep. So is the Soul Ring, by the way.
Yeah.
All very funny. The mental missteps are already dead against Shops because they have approximately 0 targets. In fact, they usually have 1 target. And Luis drew it, but, the Chalice. And Luis is just like, I'm going to have to break this. There's no way he can play a long game in this matchup, so he's just going to break it right now and try to stay on the front foot.
That seems like a tough strategy when you don't have any more mana, any more land drops. Like, I agree that typically you have to be the one to break it. I don't have any experience with FRO-BOTS, so I don't know how fast that Ravager gets out of hand. But I would say at this point, I believe this is nearly over.
Well, interestingly, I don't think Eric has white mana for the Mentor. He fetched up a basic island because obviously Wastelands is extremely important in this matchup, but then he also drew a basic island. So he finds himself without the ability to cast the Mentor.
It's just one of those things between the mana drain and the Force of Will. It seems like it's going to be difficult for EFRO to kill, or for LSV to kill EFRO before things just get out of hand.
Yeah, Eric's just hoping for something to point Force of Will at, which would then turn on Jace. He'll settle for a Tundra. Now, does he take his mana drain guard down to play a Mentor?
Well, I mean, he still has Force of Will. How many?
Yeah. You can counter one thing. You just can't counter twice now. Makes sense. Get the Mentor on the table. Now, when you counter things, you get to throw off Monk tokens. Can even Ancestral into that Chalice, which will get countered by the Chalice, but does trigger the Mentor.
Right, but now LSV can copy the Mentor.
You can try. Yeah, that seems like a Force of Will.
Yeah, and this seems completely out of hand at this point.
Chalice 2. It's actually kind of annoying for Eric, turning off both the drain and the standstill.
It's kind of annoying playing a shop stack because with a Chalice for 2 out.
Eric will have to settle for Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, just this.
Oh yeah, I'm down to just Jace. And Louis isn't even interested.
There we go.
He's blanked all 4 of Eric's cards with the Chalices, but Mentor Jace, yeah, not even worth playing out.
Yeah, time to move it along.
Eric Froehlich with the quick 1-0 lead. Let's look at the sideboards. Does anything change here?
I mean, something has to give.
Eric gets to take the missteps out of his deck. Kitaki War's Wage. Yeah, I start to see why he likes this matchup a little bit.
And Energy Flux. Disenchant, Stony Silent. I mean,
he's ready. He made a great metagame read here, didn't he?
Yeah,
I was talking to him at the pregame, and he said he kind of thought there might be an above-average amount of shops, especially above average for VSL. And he was right. There's 3 of them. There's one waiting for him in the next round if he can get through Luis. He may just, perfect metagame call his way into a 2-0 record today. Look at that.
Yeah, definitely.
Luis have anything particularly saucy? Wow. Yeah, he's got stuff. Doesn't do a whole lot. Wow, Eric Froehlich, ladies and gentlemen. That sideboard, I hadn't really thought through the sideboard. I mean, I was kind of thinking, okay, the main deck, I get it. You've got extra land. You've got a main deck Crucible, but he is loaded for bear.
Yes.
And Luis is a bear riding a bicycle right now. Oh, the coercive portal makes an appearance.
I mean, Luis has a heck of a start here.
Yes. Yeah, on the play with turn 1 Lodestone. Eric has a plow in his hand, but he can't even cast it on the first turn.
It'll be interesting to see how fast Double Ancient to Mana Vault or Mana Crypt catches up with him.
Yeah. All right. Heads or tails, the most important decision of the game.
Indeed. Apparently it's quite the decision for him as well.
I think they're adjusting graveyards and stuff to make sure the hand cams look good.
I think they're just playing it up for suspense.
Maybe. Now what do you do next? Do you coercive portal or tangle wire?
I think you coercive portal. I don't see a reason to tangle wire into a single permanent with a lodestone out. I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you're trying to keep him off a plow for a couple of turns.
I mean, I think I agree with you. Seeing the hands face up, I'm
You
like,
can always just do both.
oh, can he do both? Through a lodestone? Oh, I guess so. Both sounds better. Luis just chose not to.
Yeah, both sounded really good to me.
I mean, all you're tapping is one island.
But your opponent's at 15. The next time they're going to have 2 mana, they're going to be at 5, and you're going to have drawn 2 extra cards.
Now, is Luis going to consult the will of the council? What do you think he's going to choose? Do you think he wants an extra card, or he wants to blow up his lodestone golem, his mana crypt, and his emerald? I'm not sure the will of the council is going to agree with Luis here, but he may have the rest of the council outnumbered. Golem chips over. I assume this gets plowed.
Yeah, it has to.
And now the Tangle Wire comes down, which the psychic play says it's a turn late. Still decent. I mean, Luis is drawing 2 cards a turn, and Eric doesn't get to cast a spell for a while. I mean, I guess he can cast an Upkeep Brainstorm. That's all he can do.
Hey, it's worth it.
Well, there's Energy Flux.
Yeah, at least he's keeping him off that Energy Flux.
It's true, if it wasn't for Tangle Wire. Although Coercive Portal actually beats Energy Flux, doesn't it? Like you choose Carnage and blow up all non-land permanents, if I'm not mistaken.
But FRO can just vote to give him a... Oh, but he wins the...
Luis wins ties. Yeah, all non-land permanents. Coercive Portal.
No, it's if it wins or it's a tie, you draw a card.
Oh, of course. The
So they both
tiebreaker
have
is draw a card. So it's never blowing up the world unless both players agree to blow up the world.
Yeah.
So it's just 4 mana Personal Howling Line. Which is a fine Magic card, especially in a Shops deck. All right. Tangle Wire continues to do its thing. That Coercive Portal needs to find some action for Luis Scott-Vargas if he's going to send this to Game 3.
Yeah, it's... I don't feel like it's doing enough fast enough.
I mean, Eric isn't accomplishing a whole lot. He's got a handful of mana drains that he can't cast through a Tangle Wire.
Well, I mean, all he has to do is hit a land here for the... Oh, no, there's a Thorn now.
Yeah, there's a Thorn.
Well, that certainly helps also.
Yeah. I mean, if Eric gets the chance to deploy his hand, it's great. But the Tangle Wire is doing a lot of good work here. And don't forget, Luis has a Ghost Quarter.
Something has to get added to the board here for Luis this turn. Or all of this just unravels.
How about another Tangle Wire?
Prolongs.
Meanwhile, Luis has not lost a coin flip yet. Is that true? He's won every single coin flip with his Mana Crypt. I almost forgot there was a Mana Crypt in play because his life total wasn't moving.
I mean, it is LSV. That's... I'm not sure that card they even write 3 damage when he plays it on Magic
What
Online.
turn is it? It's like turn 6? Turn 8?
Yeah, I mean, he throws 7 cards in hand, 4 lands, 2 cards in graveyard. I guess 6-ish.
Oh, he did gain life from the Swords to Plowshares. He has lost a couple. He lost a flip or 2. I forgot about the Swords to Plowshares.
A flip, because... Yeah.
Now, there's another one. All right, new Tangle Wire. Eric is going to disenchant as response, and he went for the Coercive Portal. Scariest card on the board. Now Luis is drawing merely 1 card a turn. He's got a Tangle Wire that's keeping Eric a little bit pinned, but Eric does now have a Wasteland for that Mishra's Factory, so there's no damage source for Luis. I mean, if Luis draws nothing, he will eventually die to his Mana Crypt here.
Eventually, yes.
Duplicate. What does that do?
That does nothing.
Does nothing. You know what it does? It's a 2/4. 2/4 duplicate. We found a damage source.
Going to work. Wow, all 4 ancient tombs.
Yeah, I was going to say, Luis is ironically lucky there. Not actually so lucky. Eric's Force of Will is actually turned on now, right? 2 Thorns. He's able to leave 2 lands untapped.
Yes.
Now, I mean, Luis can make him use his Wasteland by activating Mishra's Factory, but this is the Luis's duplicate racing against Luis's Mana Crypt. That's the game we're playing now?
It appears to be. I mean, now he has the opportunity for yet.
Okay, he is going to activate.
He's...
Now, does Eric use his Wasteland and take Force of Will down? Or does he take 2 damage? It's actually a tricky spot.
Well, and if he takes the damage and then LSV plays Metamorph, does he blow up the factory in response? But
Metamorph just copies duplicate. Just a couple of 2/4s. I think the fact that Eric chose not to use his Wasteland is a tell. Luis is not going to cast something into what's a pretty obvious Force of Will at that point.
Very fair.
It's a neat little dance they're doing, though.
Tapping the Wasteland there surprises me.
Me as well. He wants a Mishra's Factory instead.
I just thought he'd be looking to get the energy flux down.
And then Luis has too much mana to pay for things.
It all costs him 2 life, typically, doesn't it?
He's got a Mana Crypt. Oh, Time Walk. That's what's going on.
Oh, fair. Just didn't matter.
Yeah. Luis is going to use his Ghost Quarter on the Wasteland while it's tapped. That's pretty smart. I mean, Eric is able to get a basic land, but Luis has now defended his Mishra's Factory.
To a point. I mean, the Mishra's Factory on Ephro's side of the board is still doing a lot of work here. It can block either LSV's Factory, or if he doesn't send the Factory...
There's Tangle Wire and 2 Thorns. And that is a less efficient way to deal with Mishra than a Wasteland. Oh, Wasteland off the top. That's why the one's next to his name, right?
Well, but I'm also just worried that Ephro's Mishra's is actually holding off duplicate as well. Like, it can just block and pump itself.
Good point.
Like, I actually felt like the Ephro's Factory was turning off both of LSV's threats as opposed to just one.
It's a good point. Now Eric has to decide if he wants to play an Energy Flux or if he wants to have a bunch of untapped mana. And it looks like he's deciding for Energy Flux. Costs 5, thanks to those Thorns, but some stuff triggers at the beginning of Luis's upkeep. And yeah, he can make 5 mana without paying life. But then he doesn't get to attack with Mishra's Factory. He can only make 3 mana if he wants a factory attack.
And the 1 mana that's getting generated off the Moxes, unless you're looking to put 2 mana back into them, those aren't going to hang around.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're kind of one-shot, keep something alive cards. Well, I have no idea how many Ancient Tombs Luis is supposed to tap and how much he's supposed to keep alive here. Clearly, you want to keep Duplicate.
Yes.
I mean, the Thorns are doing some work, but it's hard to keep them around. Also, by the way, Luis is no longer going to lose to his own Mana Crypt. That's the other thing Energy Flux does is if he wants to
choose to get rid of that.
He can choose to not pay the upkeep on the Mana Crypt. Then again, the Mana Crypt actually turns a profit mana-wise, so having a Mana Crypt around to pay Energy Flux upkeeps is not a bad thing.
Wait, I thought Flux gave it an upkeep of 2.
Oh, is it an upkeep of 2? Am I thinking of Kataki? I am thinking of Kataki. Everything has an upkeep of 2.
Yeah, that's why I was saying the Moxes were a negative, and yeah, the
Yep.
Crypt is a wash if you just want to flip coins.
This is double Kataki. Wow. All right. Luis decides to tap one Ancient Tomb. He also lost the Mana Crypt flip, but now the Crypt is gone. So he's at 6, no longer has a Mana Crypt. His mana sources, however, are down to a Mishra's Factory and 4 Ancient Tombs.
So do you tap 2 Ancient Tombs to go down to 2, activate your Mishras, put FRO to 2, and then copy your duplicate?
He's decided just to chip away with duplicate and send it back to Eric.
I guess putting yourself to 2, you can't upkeep either duplicate. You can play the Mox and upkeep
Yeah. The duplicate still has an upkeep of 2. Like, I don't think those thorns. Luis kept the thorns around for this turn because, I mean, essentially he got the one shot of mana with all of his artifact mana before it went away. But those thorns are going to die this time. He's just
I'm just trying to imagine a world where that duplicate ever gets in again. And I was just thinking, if he could have gotten him to 2 and gotten the extra duplicate out, but yeah, but it just begs the question: how do you pay for him on upkeep? Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Energy Flux. Eric just waited out 2 Tangle Wires. Luis couldn't come up with a damage source. Coercive Portal drew him a bunch of extra cards, but eventually Energy Flux comes down. Everything has an upkeep of 2, and Luis can't get through for damage. 1 Mishra's Factory is able to hold off his entire team at that point.
Yep, I tend to agree with Eric's point of view on his matchup with FRO-BOTS or Martello Shops or any of the other Shops decks.
That was Luis on the play with turn 1 Lodestone Golem and the option of turn 2 Coercive Portal plus Tangle Wire. Not good enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he plays the Tangle Wire there,
turn 2,
I agree you have to be nearly clairvoyant to do it. But if you do it, you get a couple more turns down the road. And then at the end, those Mishras and duplicates might have managed to chisel away for lethal.
He gets in an extra Lodestone Golem hit for 5 damage, which if he makes
he gets in...
play, he may actually
in 2 more because FRO just never has 2 mana at the same time.
Sure. No, he does on his next upkeep. You get in 1 extra golem hit.
Oh, sorry, on his next upkeep. So he's looking at drawing 2 cards to hit another sphere.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think it's the psychic play. I think it made sense that Luis waited a turn before dropping the Tangle Wire. I think that's totally reasonable play. Even in the worst case scenario where Eric does have the source of plowshares, he's essentially sacrificed a Tangle Wire turn for 1 hit with a golem that still isn't lethal.
Oh, I think it's often correct to hold off on a Tangle Wire when your opponent has 1 permanent.
Right, exactly.
It's not.
And even if Luis does make the psychic play and it works out, which it looks like it would have, now they go to game 3. Now Eric gets to be on the play with his Kataki, Energy Flux, lots of land, main deck Crucible deck.
Yeah, and I even like the mix of like 2 Katakis, 1 Energy Flux, because I mean it's very obvious just the way that played out. It can be very difficult to get to 3 mana, but it's worth having a chance if you do. That Energy Flux is a great card. But
all right, let's look at the bracket and see what this does. Eric advances in the winner's bracket. Eric will now be taking on Rich Shea, who, guess what? He's playing a Workshops deck.
Yep.
So Eric's got another matchup, what he thinks is good. Luis falls to the loser's bracket where he'll be playing against Steve Menendian, who, wow, poor Menendian. He ran that Burning Oath deck into back-to-back Workshop decks. I don't know if Steve's going to survive next week, but that match is next week. That's what the blue color means. It means those matches will be played during week 2. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in the loser's bracket waiting for the loser of your match.
Okay. I think Pakula is favored here.
Yeah.
I mean, my list and Martel's list are very, very close. They're not identical, but they're very similar. And I played a little bit online last night, and I off the few matches I played, I'd put Chris in that 60-40 ballpark. Like, I think he's a favorite, but it's not insurmountable, and by no means insurmountable in Vintage. But I definitely think he's a favorite. It leads for I don't know, probably more interesting matches. I don't know how many people actually want to watch a Doomsday Mirror. It's probably just a lot of waiting and thinking.
Well, we'll see what happens. Good luck to you against Chris. That is our last first round match, although we are going to play the Ricochet Eric Froehlich match also before the end of the night. So I will let Bob go. I'm actually going to turn the booth over to Luis and Steve Menendian, who will call the old school fight. Chris Pakula with a workshop deck of his own versus Bob Maher's Doomsday. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back.